What is up, guys? Another video here from Archdrake, and today I'm going to be doing an antimatter slash Tinky build for Nova. We all know that Nova Prime usually ends up using the molecular prime skill as opposed to anything else for the most part, whether it's a slow build or a fast build. But I've actually had a few requests, especially from my clan and alliance members. Especially one of my actually good friends that I know personally, who's like, I want to use Nova, but I don't necessarily want to use Molecular Prime all the time. What else can I possibly use? Is there any way to make her any tankier so that she'll last a little bit longer? As Molecular Prime doesn't really matter if it goes out for, 15 seconds or however much. So this is what I've been messing around with today. So this is going to be an antimatter slash tank build for Nova Prime. So what I'm looking at right off the bat is I'm going corrosive projection because I'm not going to be spamming molecular prime all the time, and antimatter doesn't cost as much as molecular prime does anyways. So the next one that I'm going to do is for my Exilith spot. I'm using the co-creation drift. You can try and swap it out with the power drift mod, but I seem to notice quite a bit more with this in particular Exilith mod, because when we're using it with corrosive projection, we want less armor on those enemies. We want them to blow up a lot faster, especially where a lot of Grineer end up having the shield and health making that yellow bar instead, for especially new people who don't really know what it is you're looking at. So the red is health, the blue is the shields, and then a lot of the Grineer, they have a yellow bar instead, and it's pretty much just both all in one. So this is going to work for both of them. So I am going to leave a prime continuity in here just for a little bit over 100% on power duration, just so you can do molecular prime just a little bit here and there. It will last, I think it's like 7.5 seconds, but we'll check it out in a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and throw in transient fortitude because our antimatter is going to be based off of range and strength. Now my range is at an even 100, and I'll show you guys why it is the way it is. I wanted to make it more of a tankier build. You can take off vitality or reduction. One of them, if you wanted to put on like a range mod like stretch or something like that, just to replace them. Me personally, I like the health and shield, especially the steel fiber, boosting our armor rating from 65 to 123. Not a whole big tank build for Nova, but just enough. And as you can see, my steel fiber, I'm still at an R8, so I have a feeling it'll push around 150-ish or so for the armor rating if you ended up having that maxed. Now I'm going prime flow because, one, I don't have any type of efficiency mod on here like streamline, so I want my prime flow just so I can keep on spamming those, and it's not really going to be that big of a deal anyways because, like I said, antimatter doesn't cost that much. I'm going to go intensify for more strength because, again, the antimatter is based off of strength, and the new augment mod for the antimatter. So basically what this does is the antimatter absorb. It will absorb enemies' bullets within 3 meters, increasing its damage when it explodes. Now, this is kind of like what Nyx Prime has, to where when she goes into her bubble, enemies or your allies can shoot you, and then her explosion will get bigger. It's the same way with the antimatter. You shoot this orb over and over again, and eventually the explosion is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, with this, it's actually absorbing the enemy's bullets. Not only does it absorb their bullets, but it actually bombards missiles. Now, the only drawback on that is if you're close to your antimatter orb, if you're close enough to your own orb and a bombarder goes ahead and shoots it and it gets absorbed, if you're within that radius, you're still going to be hurt by that bombarder's rocket. But if you're a little bit further away, then you're good to go. You're not going to be affected by the actual explosion, which I really, really like. So just to go ahead and show you guys, the antimatter drop only costs 50 compared to 100 on molecular prime. So what I like to do is, if you're getting in a room, or let's say you're on like a survival and you're just camping out in like a little bitty shelter, throw down 1 molecular prime just to get them a little bit slowed down. Plus the molecular primes, you're going to have explosion damage on there already. Obviously it's going to be less than a pure molecular prime build, but the antimatter drop will explode them along with the armor reduction, and you'll just wipe enemies out like there's no tomorrow. Now, what I want to show you guys is pretty much on a basic, usually the sortie starts you off at around 50 level wise, so I just wanted to throw out, a couple of Grenier type enemies all at level 50. So I got some Lancers, 1 Bombarder, and a couple of other units that end up just shooting bullets anyways, just so you guys have a clear idea of what's going on. So before I simulate it, I just want to show you guys what it looks like. So you have this orb around it that's going to end up absorbing all of the enemy's bullets. Now, the best way, when, let's say you just want to stand there and you want to direct your antimatter orb, that's always a big issue that I've run into. It's really hard to move it around, especially even if you're playing on the PC instead of Xbox or PlayStation. You're still moving that mouse or one of your toggles on a system, moving that antimatter around. So what I found to be the easiest, if you're just going to sit there and you want to shoot them out, like let's say you have enemies over here at this waypoint 1, or let's say like this center column, and you're further back like I am right now, then what you could do is, I would say, shoot your antimatter and then aim. So as long as you're looking at your actual antimatter orb, it will slow down. Now, that's how you slow it down. So let's go on to how we move it. So once I go ahead and throw out my orb, my actual movement right and left will slightly change the antimatter, but that's not enough. So how we aim is how you really do it. So if I throw out an antimatter, if I look up, it's going to go up. If I look down, it's going to go down. If I look right, it's going to go right and left. So, and if you wanted to go slowly, then you would have to do a combination. So I would aim at it to make it go slower, and then I'd slightly pull it to the right, slightly move it to the left, and it'll end up exploding all the way back there. So it's still going to be really hard to redirect your antimatter. What I find that works best is, since I've already made Nova more of a tankier build anyways, we want to go ahead and actually follow the antimatter and try and direct it as best as we can. So when I throw it, I'm going to look at it and I'm going to try and run with it. So as I'm moving, I'm redirecting myself a little bit more. As you can see, I have like a really weird angle so that I can try and follow that antimatter. And then when an enemy is right in front of you and you're moving this thing around, just look straight down and have it explode right at your feet. That way it's absorbing all the bullets while you're following it, and then it'll explode, and with all the absorbed bullets that it ends up getting, it's going to blow up those enemies. Now, I'm going to go right through this real quick, pull up some enemies, and I'm not even going to shoot the antimatter at all. The more you shoot it and the more the enemies shoot and it gets absorbed, the stronger the explosion radius and damage will be from those antimatters. But I'm not going to shoot it at all, just to show you guys how strong it can be with level 50 enemies, including a bombarder. Alright. So the first thing I'm going to do is, I'm in a small area, I'm going to molecular prime just so I can slow down those enemies, and then I'm going to throw down an antimatter. Now I'm going to just follow it around, and I'm just going to have it explode on impact with closer enemies around. Now, as you can see, I'm not really having too much trouble. As long as I'm fairly close to the antimatter, I can end up having quite a bit of damage from the explosion of the antimatter, and I don't have to worry about the enemies actually hurting me too bad, as long as I stay within a specific radius. I mean, the closer you are to it, the better it's going to be, and the safer you're going to be. Even though Nova isn't really a tankier build anyways, I have my health, my shield, and my steel fiber for a higher armor rating, which makes her not only a tankier build, but more of a different way to play with Nova, which isn't really out of the norm. So I mean, as you can see, I didn't shoot a single bullet. It was fairly easy to go ahead and kill level 50 enemies, no problem. I just threw down a small molecular prime. Goes around 7.5 seconds. And from here, we're looking at about, let's see here, probably like a 7 meter radius would be what I'd be guessing. Usually when you have a pure molecular prime build, I think it goes to around like 15, so you're looking at closer to like halfway when it comes to a molecular prime. You still got a decent range. The strength is going to the more the strength, the slower the enemies will be with molecular prime. With the antimatter, it's a fairly cool type of build. I mean, it's definitely it's definitely different. It almost makes it feel like this Nova's been around forever. It just makes it feel like it's a brand new type of way of fighting with Nova, but it's the exact same abilities. It just happens to be a less common way of playing with her. So I would say if you're interested in playing something similar to Nyx, and you already like Nyx, but you want to have the feeling of like moving around or something like that, go ahead and give Nova a try. It's going to be a little bit tankier, and it's going to have it'll slow down the enemies, and it'll explode them, along with absorbing enemy fire, as opposed to sitting in one spot like Nyx Prime does. So, one other quick little tip I want to tell you guys. The more you shoot this antimatter orb, eventually, if you have a strong enough weapon, or you shoot it fast enough, that orange orb will actually glow. And if you can get it to glow, you've actually maxed out the amount of damage that the Nova Prime's antimatter drop will actually explode. So if you can get it to glow, then that's going to be the biggest explosion and the most damage that your antimatter will actually do. If you don't worry about it. As long as you're shooting it with your strongest weapon, whether it's a shotgun or a fast shooting rifle, or even, well, if you have anything that you can explode next to it, like my Sonicore, adding quite a bit of damage to it with high elemental and impact damage. But if you can't, don't worry about it. A couple of shots from anything really helps to make the explosions quite bigger. So that's pretty much the tank / antimatter augment build. I would highly suggest giving it a try if you're looking for something new when it comes to Nova. I really actually enjoy this build. Surprisingly, I didn't think that I was going to. And for the most part, there's very, very few videos online for it anyways. So don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. And if you guys have any questions or comments or improvements that you can make on it, by all means. I mean, this is a fairly new build. I haven't really messed with it for too long, but there's very limited amount of stuff you can do when you want a tankier build that you're actually following around your antimatter for defensive purposes. So alright guys, have a good one. Don't forget to check out my other videos, especially Ash Prime. We got God mode that can kill up to 135 leveled enemies with Blade Storm instead of Teleport. So give that a check out and have a good one.